Uh,
Yes.
Mr. Regal, of course, King Booker's Court starts with Booker T, who you worked with in WCW. You
A
talked
lot,
about
a lot,
how
yeah.
those,
Do you know the story about with it? There's a bit of a stories over time, and I'm telling old stories, but they all lead to something. So I met. Well, now that this is going to lead into all kinds of stuff now.
well, that's what we do.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I used to live when I first came to America. I lived in Marietta, Georgia, and next door to the apartments, a lot of wrestlers lived in this block of apartments called Le Park on Windy Hill Road in Marietta, Georgia. And next door to Le Park was Main Event Fitness, which was owned by Sting and Lex Luger.
sure.
And we could walk out the apartment and just up a bit of a grass verge, and there was a hole in this like fence, and you could just walk straight into the gym. And Sting and Lex were very kind to let any of us train there. Okay, so my wife had just come over. She was over. Yeah, she was over for the summer. She was only allowed. I believe they came in middle of '93. Is that correct, or near the end of? My wife was definitely there. Which my wife for the first 3 months
93
of
sounds right.
right. So in 1993, my wife and family were only allowed because of visa issues to come over for 3 months of the summer. So it was either then or in the I think it was the March of the following in '94. She came and my family came and stayed. So it's got to be around. My wife was definitely with me. I'm walking. Booker's told this, and I've heard him tell this, where it was the opposite way around, where we were walking out and they were walking in. It wasn't. And I do remember this well. We were walking to go in, me and my wife, and there was just like several steps, and out of the doors came Sid Vicious, and either side of him were Booker and Lash, Stevie Ray, right?
Wow.
And they're looking now. We can get into a bit of Sid later because there's a few things with Sid,
There's a lot of great Sid
and I,
stories.
I I like Sid a lot. I really do like Sid. I'm going to say this though, not when he was around wrestling, because he turned into something else, and a lot of people do that, and they have to do that.
Sure.
I have no problem with that.
It's dog
But
eat dog, right?
right, but we lived it again. He lived upstairs from me in an apartment, and we used to hang, by the pool, and he'd play with my kids and go in the pool with my. He's just a nice fella. But when he comes to wrestling, you have to do your dealings, however you do them. So maybe keep that in mind. Make a note because this story might come in a bit later, or
Right.
it definitely will at one point. So Sid is walking out with Booker and Lash. I have to if remember to say Stevie Ray because
So
people
Lash is what you call Stevie Ray.
yes, because that's his name, and me and Lash have always got on and
Right.
get on very well. There's just this particular first meeting, we've always got on. Me and Booker didn't, and what happened was me and my wife were walking in. Now here comes Sid. Now again, I love Sid, but I'm I don't think I'm anything.
Right.
We've gone over that before.
Sure.
But I also went through a lot when I was younger to get into this job. And at a certain age, I realized what's the worst you can do to me is beat me up.
Right.
I've been beat up that much, it doesn't matter.
So you're
And,
humble, but
and
you're not going to
so
be intimidated.
I'm not intimidated about anything
Right.
or
Right.
anybody. And,
Right.
and that's not trying to sound tough. I don't care.
Right.
Oh, well, okay, beat me up or kill me. And I'm not exaggerating there. I don't care. That's the thing that's got me through this because and I there was one wrestler particularly when I was 16 and 17 who made my life hard, and I don't begrudge him that at all. There's other things that he did at the time that I'm not so happy with, but we actually became friends, and I don't begrudge what he did because he made me earn my spot in this. No different than going. If I look at it now, it's no different than me going. Would have been going to the Japanese dojo or whatever. You have to earn your spot, and they have to know that you're going to stay around. And you have to. It was just a different day and age. This is pre-wrestling school days
Right.
when there was no way into this,
This is
and we
trial by
became.
fire days.
Yes, this
Yeah.
is so. I was getting, it was just part of the initiation of getting through wrestling. So by the time I was 17, there was a lot of things happened. I got introduced to Marty Jones, who retrained me for the next 18 months. Now, Marty's a handful and can be a handful when it comes to he will not back down to a lion. He's trained with Billy Robinson since he was 6 years old. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and he's just he'll not frightened of anything, or he'll fight anybody, right? So I was around him, and then him teaching me and growing up, and also I started working because I was a scared little boy in the wrestling game, and although I was going through these matches and getting, you know, shown the ropes basically. I It's a lot of stories, but these are all things that sort of happened in my teenage years. Uh, for whatever reason, at one point, I decided that I need to toughen myself up a bit. And although I'm getting, whether I like it or not, I'm getting toughened up in the wrestling. And I thought, well, what's the best thing I can do? I know I'll go and work in a nightclub. And I just lied about my age and ended up working in a nightclub. Well, the first night on the job as a doorman in a nightclub, I'm around two really good doormen who I could have been around two idiots, but I was around two really good doormen, Dave Beatty and Dave Secker, and they were good doormen. There's a difference between doormen and bouncers. They told me that on the first night. Doormen stop fights, bouncers cause fights.
Uh,
So they were very good doormen. Yes, they could do whatever, but their
right.
things to me were number one, no runners, which means whatever happens, we all back each other up. Okay,
All right. No runners.
right. Number two, we are doormen, we're not bouncers. Now I know it's all bouncers now. Nobody knows the difference, but it was a deal in those days that they used to sort of put the doorman on the front door so you're
Right.
polite and can control things.
It's a customer service position.
Put the bouncers who like
Right.
to or shouldn't be anybody there to cause trouble, but put them in there. If you can control the front door, you can let in and try and keep out a lot of the trouble, so that people inside, if there is any fights, the bouncers take care, and then you all help. It's just a different kind of a mentality. So I was doing that. I was training with Marty. I was getting bigger, whatever else. And then I met Marty being one of them. Why are you know, letting anybody knock you about? Well, it's just part and parcel of what I'm doing. Because he was like, when I went and trained with him, he used to take me down and like put me in all these submission holds and that.
Right.
He's Billy Robinson trained
Right.
and like teaching me again. I'm working full time in this small company on a Sunday mornings. I'm going for 18 months to train with him on a Sunday morning for 3 hours, and he's putting me through it and teaching me properly. So I'm having to all these things, but he's making sure I know that the wonderful fellow that started me, Bobby Barron, should have gone to the Olympics and would have ranked very highly. Had an unfortunate accident. He was in a swimming pool. Somebody dove off the top diving board and landed on his head and broke his neck right before the Olympic trials.
Jeez.
So he ended up becoming a professional wrestler because of Dave Taylor's dad, and he knew a lot of stuff. Well, he'd always been teaching me that, but again, I'm 16, 17. I'm not big enough, strong enough for. He's teaching me stuff, and just things happening, right? Once you're around working in a club and you're not in this insular wrestling world, you're seeing real things happen. And you got to stop real fights. So
Right.
you realize, right, okay, I'm
Sure.
getting knocked about at work, and it's just part of what I've got to put up with for a couple of years to show that I'm not going to run away. But, and again, it's all over a couple of year period, right? And then I meet Dave Taylor. Well, I've met Dave Taylor, but he wouldn't speak to me for the first year and a half I knew him, because he just was the way he was. But once he sort of realized I wasn't going anywhere, you do realize you're now 6'3" and whatever. You do realize nobody can do much to you if you don't want them. I mean, he had that talk with me one day. Oh, right, yeah. And so all these things that you're going through put you in a mindset of, what's the worst that can happen to me?
Right.
Right. So I know that's a long, but it's all things that have happened to me in
But
real life.
I think it bears some explanation why one would not be intimidated by Sid. You know, he's
Right.
an intimidating
Well,
guy, but you've explained it
I
pretty
know,
well.
but look, and Sid, I hope you don't take offense to this, because I really like Sid, but Sid couldn't fight sleep. I mean, he's just, you know, he's not a fighting man.
He couldn't
And
fight sleep. Is that what
no,
you
you
said?
know what I mean. It's just not his. It's not his thing. You know, there's just
Right.
I'll leave other people.
For
You
the
know,
other stories, right?
right,
Yeah.
I'll let Jim Cornette tell him stories
Right.
on his show,
Right.
because that's what he
Right.
does, right? But he knows a few stories. Well, I've got my own personal Sid story. Well, while we're on it, I might as well say it.
Might as well.
Right. Oh dear. So keep me on, because this is where we start, right? And then we go into
Right.
all these stories. So when it was about well, I know it was 2 weeks. If you don't know, I don't know if we got time to go into this. There was an incident between Arn Anderson and Sid
It's a
that
pretty famous
happened.
incident that most
Right.
wrestling fans are
Well,
aware of in some sense.
right. Somebody might have the exact stats of this, but this happened. The thing with me happened a few weeks before that tour. I was on that tour when that happened, but I wasn't there, because we landed in London. I rented a car because, again, my wife couldn't. This is the first year I was in WCW. This is the like September or October of '93. My wife's had to go home after the 3 months that she could spend in the summer. So I landed, instead of getting on the bus with everybody, I get in a rental car, drive to Cardiff in Wales. I'm on first match with Ric Flair, which was the first time I wrestled Ric Flair. I think this might be about the September time, if I remember rightly. No, maybe beginning of October. But somebody will know better than me. It's the only one of the few ever times that I've asked to leave early. And so I was on first with Ric Flair, which was mind-blowing. I'm stood there across the ring from Ric Flair in Cardiff going, I was working in a tent in Germany last year. Or, I was working shows. What am I doing across the ring from him?
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's
Yeah.
mind-blowing, because I've watched a lot of Ric Flair, and I've done, I think I've told you this before, that series of matches he had in '89 with Steamboat. I used to put those on while I did my 1,000 Hindu squats,
Wow.
because I thought, if I can, because they were going at such an incredible pace, I thought, if I can keep doing this, I can keep up with them.
Sure.
This was just things that I did. I get home, because it was when I was working. If this is whenever I was working in England in '89, or whenever those matches, we finally got them. See, that was it. We didn't see him. My friend I mentioned before, Peter Thompson, he got the tapes, and once I got that, I'm like, wow, this is, first of all, incredible match. But then, that gives me some, because I'm always training and doing squats. But now I was doing 2,000 mile a week in England. We had my youngest son, who'd just been born the year before. I was only in England for a short time before I was back. Every time I was back in England, I was only there a short time, and I was back off flying somewhere else to be, because from '88 till I came to America in '93. I wasn't in England much, but when I was there, my wife had still had a job. She'd go. I'd drive back through the night, get back home at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, so she could go leave to go to work at 5:30, so I could look after my son until she got home from work, and then I would drive off. Or sometimes we had to go uh, to my wife's mom's, and she would look. I would drop my son off so I could go off and wrestle somewhere if I had to, depending what time I had to leave. If my wife hadn't got back from work,
Sure.
so I would put this match on, or a series of matches, depending how quickly I wanted to do them, and pace myself, and I would do my Hindu squats, and it was like 300 regular and 700 jumping ones while they were doing their match, right? So I've seen a lot of Ric Flair and different times, but that's one of those things that really sticks to me. That was like a like there was a time when I heard Bob Backlund did an hour step ups. So on the days that I used to do squats every other day. On the other day, I used to do a minimum of 45-minute step ups. So I consider myself and I always was. I was doing that until the very end. I might not looked as good because I was getting all kinds of injuries and whatever else, and then my heart wasn't working right. But I always did my squats or I did step ups. So my legs, because as a young wrestler, any wrestler, sometimes all you've got left is your legs. And if you haven't trained your legs enough or got good condition in your legs, you're going to fall over.